Ready? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Sweetwater County Intergovernmental Joint Leadership Meeting on March 3rd, 2021. Ready? And it's 5:30. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Sweetwater County Intergovernmental technical difficulty here, people. Hang on. Okay, are we ready? Rob, can you hear me okay? Rob Zotti? Pete Rust? Okay, let's go. We'll start this over. I'd like to welcome you to the Sweetwater County Board of Commissioners Chambers for this Sweetwater County Intergovernment Joint Leadership Meeting for this Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. First of all I'd like to notify, I saw Commissioner Smith on, I see Commissioner Lloyd's here, myself, and is Commissioner Shanefield on? All right, but we do have a quorum present. Commissioner Toman will be excused absence for this evening. So before we get going and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this point in time, because of it's a meeting with the many entities, let's go first and see, make sure what we have for representation for our meeting. First off, Mayor Russ from Green River and Green River
Yeah,
Council.
did you want me to speak, Doc?
No, not yet. I'm just taking roll so we know who's here. So you're here as well as some council members?
Yeah, Councilman George Jost and Sherry Bushman are both on also, along with 3 staff.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mayor. Mayor Como, Rock Springs City Council, you and any members?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Looks like I have Councilman Robinson here with us, Councilman West, Councilman Hickerson, and I have to go down this list. I'm sorry, from what I see, Councilman Halter, Councilwoman Demas, that's what I see right now. So I believe we do have a quorum.
Don't forget old Councilman Zotti there.
Is Zotti, is it a number? I don't see his name on the list. Maybe it's a number it's coming in as. Oh, I'm sorry, there it is, Councilman Zotti. So yes, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and welcome council members from Rock Springs as well as Green River. From the town of Wamsutter, Mayor Joe Erickson, are you on? I don't see him. I do know we do have a councilwoman from Wamsutter in the chambers present. Any other council members from Wamsutter?
Doc, I'm here too. Dusty.
Thanks, Dusty. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Also from Granger, Mayor McCullum, I believe he called me and said he would be maybe absent or late getting on. Do we have any other council members from Granger? Thank you. From Superior, Mayor Wolf. Is Mayor Wolf on with any other council members from Superior? Thank you. And from Bear Oil, Mayor Regano, are you on with any other council members? I do know they had a town council meeting tonight. They may have to start early, so we'll move on. So with that, first order of business is I'll entertain a motion from the commissioners to suspend Robert's rules.
I'd so move.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lloyd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. We have a motion by Commissioner Lloyd, a second by Commissioner Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. So with that, we'll go first on our order of business will be committee updates. And let's go ahead and start out with, I believe, Commissioner Smith, you're there, aren't you?
I'm here, yes. Not there, but I'm here.
You're here, but you're lead with ambulance, is that correct?
That is true.
All right. I know that possibly you had invited some ambulance people here along with your committee. So the floor is yours to give us an update of where ambulance is at, please.
Sure, thank you. We presented the letters to city councils last night regarding our proposal of dividing the subsidy for both Castle Rock and Sweetwater Medics. I think it was very well received by both. But that's what we're working towards. I hope that it started a dialogue. We're happy to do our best to work it out. So whatever that means, I think it's a starting point, and happy to hear from any of them as we work towards coming to a resolution on this long-standing issue. We do have, I see Ron Gaddy on, if there were any questions for him. I know Councilman Robinson invited him, and glad to see him on board. So I guess if yes, sir.
The CEO from Castle Rock, Bailey Doctor, is here.
Hi, Bailey.
Chambers.
Oh, good. I was like, I didn't see her on the Zoom, so she did tell me she'd be there. So excellent. Yeah, so if there are questions for either one of those, I think we could entertain those now and go from there. Tim or Sherry, did you have anything that you wanted to chime in? There are two representatives, Tim Robinson from Rock Springs and Sherry Bushman from Green River, helping with the committee, as well as Bailey. Anything else you'd like? Tim, I see you're unmuted there. What do you got?
I was just going to, hand the floor to you. You did a great job last night, and I'm not sure that I want to take any of the heat that you took last night. So I think that our points have been pretty well made. I think that our views at this point are pretty known to everybody. But I will agree that, I think even though we haven't come to a solution yet, I do believe that we're all on the same. We all have the same goal ultimately, even if we don't know exactly how to get there yet. I don't think these things ever happen really fast. So if I have anything to pipe in, I'll unmute here in a little bit. I'll let Bailey chat if she wants to, and go from there.
Sherry, anything from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, what Tim was just mentioning. We're on the same page, but I believe SafeTech is our roadmap. And I think coming up with a cash flow projection for the next 5 years and different options. And I think between Tim and I, we're gathering all this data. Maybe he and I can put some numbers together and, like I said, present some different options. But at least we're heading into the next steps.
Thank you. And I will say, again, as I said last night, thank you to both of you for the excellent work, and Bailey as well for helping out with the committee. It's been awesome. So much appreciated. As I said, we've got Ron Gaddy on board. So if there's questions for him, I'm sure he'd be happy to entertain them now. Is that true, Ron?
Commissioner, this is Steve.
Hey, Steve Corbellis. Excellent.
Yeah, sorry, Ron is watching the video, but he's out of town. And so I'll be entertaining any questions for Sweetwater Medics side.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I apologize, my camera, I cannot get it to work.
I'm about 50-50, so no worries. Amongst I guess the general group, are there questions for Steve that I didn't answer last night, or or you'd like to present to him?
I've got a question, Commissioner.
Go right ahead.
Steve, Keaton West, City Rock Springs. It was brought to my attention that this study, we heard a lot about the study last night and why has nothing been done with it? I know originally that time the commission felt like they kind of knew the answers that were going to come from that study, and so they weren't fully supportive of it. But I believe your organization found some grant funding or something of that like, then they were able to perform the study, and it was basically surrounded around a district-wide ambulance service and all the different hurdles that come with that. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but at the time with the current contract, or I guess with that contract, not the current contract, because it's been changed since then, but everything seemed to be working somewhat smooth. I mean, they had the built-in 5% increase, throughout the 5-year period or whatever it was, but there were really no problems, as I recall. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that some of the hesitation, some of the increase in your guys' subsidy is coming in the fact that, the county isn't willing to sign a longer lease than a year, say. Is that part of why we're seeing some of this subsidy?
Councilman West, I think a simple explanation for that is yes. It's kind of a multifaceted question, so I'll try to break it down for you. We did sign a 5-year contract, and it had a built-in 2.5% increase over the years. And we found that with all of the changes, which during that period, from 2010 to 2014, we had a lot of changes in the national healthcare structure, and it really limited our ability. It was a built-in 2.5% increase. It also limited the amount that we could increase for our services over that 5-year period. And I think it's safe to say that it really came down to an inability to forecast the market 5 years in advance for us at that time where we were at as a company. And it caused some issues. We did do a 24-month contract after that. And I believe we did another 1-year contract, and then we've been extending another 1-year contract that's going into like its 2nd year now. So yeah, a big part of it is that operating from year to year, or, as a lot of times with these extension, it's been noted that it's a month-to-month contract. There is a lack of ability on our part to extend our liability past the end of the term of that contract. So our expenses do increase because we can't take out long-term loans, to buy new ambulances and that kind of thing. So I would say that, yes, that's a factor. It's also been our experience since 2015 on that, our costs have increased substantially. And the contract has been also keeping up with those increased costs of service. So, it is kind of a simple answer. I don't want to ramble too much, but yes, it is a lack of ability for us to have any sort of like long-term financing past the end of the contract. But there also are some price increase for the services that we need to run a company that also play into effect with those increases.
Appreciate that. I mean, you just look back at the history of the subsidy, and it goes from, around 275 up to 300, 325, and then boom, we're up at this big jump, 400 plus. Now we're looking at, 600. So there's got to be an explanation for that. So I appreciate that. I do know in one of those contracts as well, in the event that either side wanted to terminate services, I believe the county had the first right of refusal for any ambulances in the event that Sweetwater Medics might want to liquidate. I mean, is that an option that, I guess this is maybe a question for the county too, but if Medics is faced with, hey, we have aging equipment and we need new ambulances and we can't afford them, rather than this increased subsidy, can the county entertain the idea of helping out with ambulance purchases that are leased back to Medics so they at least have some skin in the game? Is that an option that's been discussed throughout all these committees that might help with decreasing that subsidy, since we're all faced with obviously a tough budget constraint?
Councilman West, I think that again, the best answer that I can provide for you now is that yes, that is an option moving forward. Because right now, really what it comes down to is the subsidy is based on what is outlined in the contract that was developed by it was initially just written between the company and the Board of County Commissioners. But when we first signed a contract, we advocated for and negotiated to put in an oversight board that is made up of area stakeholders that oversee the contract. And they had a lot of input on the contract going forward from when that board was stated. And really it comes down to some of the services outlined in those contracts that base the amount of money that we need to provide the services that are outlined in the contract. I think that all options are on the table for us, but really what it comes down to is the contract has to cover the cost of preparedness for responding on the calls, and that's always the most expensive model. When we take the subsidy check from the county, we really act like a pass-through organization, and it just goes directly into our payroll account because that's our highest expense, to have the crews on standby to respond on calls. So I think there is wiggle room in there if we talk about long-term capital purchases, and we don't have to have that money put away to purchase new ambulances or stuff. I would be all for that, so that the community actually owned assets and, like you said, had skin in the game. But regardless of how contract negotiations go or what happens, we've always focused on the sustainability of the system. And that's why we have advocated from day one, from the time that study was put out, to move towards those steps in that sustainability study. Because unlike Castle Rock, which is a taxation district, our organization is a small mom and pop shop, is what I often refer to it as. So if there was some sort of tragedy or something that fell on one of the owners, it could literally fold our company up overnight because we don't exist anymore. So that there's always been that rickety frame of sustainability that we've always been trying to support and move forward with our organization and all these contracts going forward. And that's what we would still advocate for from this day on, is saying, I'm glad these conversations have started. I want us to move in a direction to where we don't have to question who's going to provide ambulance, or if a company can literally just cut and run or cancel the contract in 30 days notice and leave everybody hanging dry.
Appreciate it. That's all I have, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr.
Anybody
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, this is Steve, this is Tim, City of Rock Springs. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on your inability to collect for services? What do you foresee as the largest hurdle there? What, just people not paying their bills, or can maybe share some information there?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's different than any other service provided nationally when it comes to the medical field. We have a certain percentage of population that only has technically access to the healthcare system through the emergency means because of the way that our model's created. So when people don't have, preventative care measures and stuff, generally they get access to healthcare through the emergency department or by calling 911. Generally, it differs with area, but there's a large portion of people that don't have insurance. And in our area, without looking up the exact figures, I mean, we're roughly about 35% of our population that is my company's volume accounts for about, not our population, I'm sorry, but the customers that I see that we pick up in the ambulance, about 35% of them have no insurance, and they account for less than 2% of our overall income annually for that. So really we have a big 30% swath of our patients that we see that we don't collect any money from at all. And that's just how the healthcare system is kind of built here. The healthcare model in general, when it comes down to collections, is really a complex model. Some patients have some coverages that allow for a certain amount of payments. When you talk about like Medicare payments or Medicaid payments, those are generally fixed. So when we publish the rates that we charge for services, it's really misleading in a way because people equate, well, they ran this many calls, they must have charged an average amount of this. It really doesn't equate to any of our collections that we get. It's really a patient by patient thing, and it depends on what their insurance providers have and the coverages that they get. And sometimes even if it's like with a Medicare or Medicaid patient, there's not even an avenue for us to go back and collect more money than what the state or the government offers. We just have to collect that flat fee. With other insurance companies, we are, maybe a preferred provider with certain insurance companies, and it doesn't matter what we charge those insurance companies either. They just pay us a flat provider rate. And so it's hard to really break it down in a simple explanation, but we really have a steady volume of patients that we see, and we really have no idea of what the income is going to be from month to month. It's really variable. I can look at my charts and it looks like a heartbeat with all the peaks and valleys on month to month collections. So it's really a coin toss on how good the month is going to be for us. I don't know if I clarified or caused more confusion, but it is a fairly complex system. We also, in one of the responses to Councilman Robinson, when we were telling that, we said it's such a complex issue, rather than taking our word for us, because I can see how we can come across as biased in presenting our view, I would recommend you get some expert consultation on it and let them kind of explain those numbers to you and how that charge system works.
Thanks, Steve. Mr. Chairman, that's all I had.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Floor is back to you, Commissioner Smith, and we do have Bailey Doctor here in the chambers when you're finished with your committee. If she would like to speak, or if anybody has any questions for Ms. Doctor with Castle Rock.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Smith, can I ask Mr. Corballis a couple questions, please?
Floor is yours.
Thank you.
We'll get 'em.
Steve, how are you? That's the easy question. All right, Steve. So just a question. You had talked about the changes in the healthcare model that have increased to the costs. What kind of changes have your organization made to kind of go with those changes in costs? Mayor Como specifically talked about collection and the difficulty in collection. Have there been looks into different collection models, maybe using a professional collection agency, or not a professional collection agency, but a collection agency that's based on using ambulance, retrieval? What kind of things have been done by your organization to deal with those changes? So I guess that would be my question to start.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Commissioner. When we initially opened up our business, we actually had an in-house biller that coded and builded all of our runs. And as the organization started growing, we actually switched to a national provider that specialized in ambulance collections. A couple of years ago, the provider that we use actually sold to another larger national provider that specializes in ambulance billing. And they get a percentage of the monies that it's collected. And so it's incentivized for them to collect as much money as they could from each claim that goes through. We found that that's the best way to maintain a decent collection model for our company. We don't have the expertise we felt to, or the deep enough pockets to hire and train somebody personally to have in-house billing. But the agency that we utilize and have utilized has delivered exceptional service. I think that we would be hard pressed to find better collections than what we're getting from any other provider. And they're certified ambulance coders. They work very well with Medicare. When we have our Medicare audits, we come back, very highly rated. So I think overwhelmingly we're happy with the collection agency that we've chosen. And we did go to a national provider, I guess is the simplest explanation.
Mr. Caballos, do you know off the top of your head approximately what your collection percentage is in retrieval of those dollars?
I don't have the numbers off the top of our heads. We do receive some reports that we have, and I know that we provide the 911 collection reports to the ambulance board monthly or whenever those meetings are.
And I guess one last question, if that's okay. Because sometimes Doc tells me I ask too many and he cuts me off, but I guess I know as of right now, the contract's set to end here in a little bit. If it was offered to continue with the current contract, would you guys be willing to continue at this point?
At the current contract rate, we're absolutely willing to continue.
All right, that's fine. Okay.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We know our place in this discussion between the government entities. We're a provider. We're contracted. We respect the decisions that you guys make as individual boards or together. We're here as a solution to whatever decision you guys make.
Okay. I guess that would be my questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bushman, you have a question or two?
Yes, thank you. Stephen, I'm part of the committee as well. And I have a question, and it's two-pronged in regards to your bad debt. So first, what exactly is your write-off policy? Just being familiar, I'm director of credit and collections in my personal life, so I kind of understand this realm. And then the second part is, because there's a certain percent of uninsured patients, do you have a reserve for the allowance for doubtful accounts on your financials?
I did not hear the second part of your question. Your mic kind of cut out. But to answer your first question, we have a write-off policy for some of our bad debts. And generally the way that it works is if it's not a contractual allowance or a write-off that's automatic between the insurance companies and our and who we're a preferred provider for, we take those on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes people will write in and explain the circumstance of why they can't pay, and we take those as a case-by-case basis. But if you could repeat the second part of your question, I apologize, your mic cut out.
Oh, that's okay. Actually, I wanted to go back to the write-off policy. Do you have any situation to where your invoices are inflated, therefore you need to do adjustment, but it's against that invoice, therefore it's on the ask on the revenue side. Is it possibly that you've had it in the write-off by mistake? Has that happened?
I don't know if I could answer that question. I would have to consult with our company with that. But I don't believe so, because the breakdowns that I receive actually have breaks it down into contractual allowances and then write-offs that are, reviewed and decided on by us. So I don't think that would be an issue, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Okay. So you essentially approve them before they get written off.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the second question was, because you have a certain percent of uninsured patients, do you do a reserve for the allowance for doubtful accounts?
No.
Okay. That's the only questions I had. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Perhaps Councilman Robinson?
Hey, Stephen, real quick, over the past several years, there have been increases, pretty significant increases in the subsidy. Like Councilman West said, we started out at, a couple 100,000, then went to 300, and then 4, and then 6, and now it's at 9, almost $1 million. If the contract were to continue, how do we know that in 2022, we're not going to need to pay out another $170,000 or, even more? The last bump was almost 300,000. If I'm looking at the numbers correctly, what guarantees can we have that that's not going to happen?
Well, thanks for the question. We have been trying to run our company in a form of a public and private partnership. And we've always tried to charge reasonable rates. And when we got stuck in the 5-year contract, not stuck, that's bad verbiage. When we agreed to the 5-year contract, I've talked to the commissioners about this, and we own this, but we negotiated that rate and we did not forecast correctly. And it literally led to us almost being bankrupt as a company. So the rates that were being charged early on were not accounting for all of our expenses as a company. The newer rates that we've had as we move forward are more accurate to what it costs to cover the services outlined in the contract. And we've never moved forward as a company in a perspective of trying to price gouge anybody or take large profits out and keep them for ourselves as a company. We have been looking at this system wide. And to give you an example, my average collection rate, or my average profit margin for the entire existence of my company has been 3%. And between the years of 2014, 2015, our expenses as a company increased over $400,000 a year. And just to try to keep up with the level of service that was demanded, in the community as a whole. So I can't guarantee that the price would never increase. But what I could guarantee is that we promised the commissioners in some of the meetings that we had was that if our price was too high and I was having an unreasonably high profit margin, which I set at kind of an industry standard of 15 to 20%, if I was going way over those profit margins, I would actually come back to them and renegotiate a lower rate to maintain a profit margin of 15 to 18, 20%.
What's the closest you've come to that profit margin since Sweetwater Medics went into business, 2012, 2013?
In 2014, I had a profit margin of 22%. And then I went negative every year after that. And so we have yet to hit anything close to the 2019, our profit margin was 6%.
And I don't have the form right in front of me with the averages, but I believe last year was 16% profit or 16% collectible. And on average, it was somewhere between 20 and 40. That's probably the best that I saw in the stats that you gave me. Now, granted, there were a few months in those stats that you gave me that were documented, so I didn't have complete stats. Just because I know that those the forms that you gave me were based on meetings of the ambulance policy board. So I know that there weren't records at least provided at that point. I'm sure that you have those records, but even last year, once you increased the actual fees that you charge, it doesn't seem as though the collectibles were consistent with the increase. It seemed like there was still a significant, I mean, at 16%, you weren't collecting as much, even though you were charging more. Is that accurate? Can you?
That's absolutely accurate. And that's because of the way that the medical billing model is created. So like I said, it doesn't really matter what we charge. There might be a small percentage of patients that we receive that increased rate from. But if we're already a preferred provider with an insurance company, that rate's locked in and it's flat. It doesn't matter what we charge. If it's coming from Medicaid or Medicare, those are flat rates. It doesn't matter really what we charge to that. So we're gonna have those lower collection rates, and those collection rates, even when we charge higher, can actually look like the collection rates are going lower, even though we're collecting roughly the same amount of money.
Right. Okay, that's all I've got for right now, Commissioner Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey, can we bother you?
Yeah, she's coming to the podium. Bailey, please introduce yourself when you get to the podium.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Bailey. I'm the CEO for Castle Rock Medical Center. Everybody gets to see the back of my head. Thanks for inviting us to be here. It's been really exciting working on the ambulance committee with Commissioner Smith and the city councilmen that have been appointed from both cities. So thank you for bringing those of us to the table. I think it's important for Sweetwater Medics and Castle Rock to be part of this conversation tonight. I just wanted to briefly kind of go through from Green River's perspective and from Castle Rock's perspective, kind of what's been going on historically, and then speak to a couple of the questions that have been asked of Steve from Castle Rock's perspective. So when we started talking a few weeks ago about the two cities needing to help fund ambulance, this is something, you know, that we've been talking about for a really long time. Castle Rock's been at the table since SafeTech was employed, since before the current commission was here. And I do feel like, you know, we do have the kind of the same conversations over and over, but I do want to say at least now I feel like there is some traction being made. And thank you for recognizing the ambulance is a critical service in the community. So as far as the two different cities, you know, being at the table, my top priority, of course, is Green River. And Castle Rock charges a tax to the citizens of Green River already, right? So we pay a property tax in Green River for the medical center and the ambulance service. The Trona patch helps pay that tax, and we assess a mill levy here. The district gets about $2.4 million a year for that mill levy, and about $900,000 of that goes to operating our ambulance service. We do have revenues that come in through the ambulance service, but the losses that Steve was speaking to, you know, you don't always collect on every ambulance call that goes out. So we do have bad debt that we do have to write off, mostly through the ambulance, not the medical center. But in my opinion, I think that Green River should be responsible for paying half of the subsidy that Castle Rock collects And I think Rock Springs, if the cities are going to come to the table, it would be up to Rock Springs to subsidize the Rock Springs portion. Simply because I think Green River citizens already pay a tax to the district, and I don't think it would be fair to also tax them to help subsidize us even more, just to keep things fair between the two communities. Something that hasn't been mentioned so far tonight is that, you know, we have these two services. We also have some other ambulance services in the county. And there is one service in the county that gets all the ground transports from the hospital. There's an exclusive contract that's set up with Memorial Hospital of Sweetwater County for ground transports, and that is with Sweetwater Medics. Castle Rock has come to the board at Memorial, I think twice, to ask if we could be part of a rotation for ground transports, because those are the calls that we call our gravy calls. And when we do have the luxury of getting one of those calls because Sweetwater Medics is out, we usually can bill about $2,500 to $3,000. We would see a return on that. So whether we bill $5,000 for that call, taking someone down to Salt Lake City and back, the return on that is about $2,500 to $3,000, depending on whether they're commercially insured or whether it's Medicare or Medicaid. Something that I'm a little confused about, or one of the things that's been brought up, is the amount of bad debt that we're experiencing in Sweetwater County. I recognize that Green River may not have quite as much Medicaid population and uninsured population as Rock Springs, but it certainly can't be that different. So, you know, something that we've talked about in Green River is trying to bill as much as we can. We do collect for 90 days at our, you know, in our billing department before we send the patient to collections. And then after that, our billing collections company that we outsource all of our collections to, we do pay them a fee to collect that money. It's a small fee, but they then make something to try to collect, and that stays with them forever. I want to say forever, but I think it's actually the statute says we have to stop and actually write it off after 5 years. So I do think our billing practices, although are maybe similar, there are some significant differences, I think, between the two ambulance services. So if there's anything that we can do to help kind of guide that, or even, you know, lend a hand, we'd be willing to help with that. Because certainly we don't have to write off anywhere near, I think our write-off percentage right now, our bad debt percent is about 35 to 40%. Nationally, the bad debt percentage is about 35. But we do have a little bit more uninsured population here because Wyoming has not expanded Medicaid. So we do have some people around here that don't have Medicaid, have no insurance. They may apply for our indigent care, and we do review those on a case-by-case basis, but we're talking about $10,000 a year worth of revenue that we do handle kind of on a case-by-case basis. So 7 to 10 patients really is all that we're talking about there. So anyway, I think, I can't remember the other questions that were asked of Steve, but if I can answer anything for Sherry or Tim with regards to the Green River service, I do want to also say that we've had a lot of questions from the community in the last couple of days since it's come up on the media more about whether or not we will have ambulance service here in a few weeks. We are looking at, if the subsidy gets cut altogether, we will have to potentially reduce our staff. We employ full-time crews right now. We have one full-time crew that's on 24/7. But we can do that. I mean, we can cut back some hours and try to be responsible about, trying to make up that difference. So whatever we can do to help, we're just here to help with the process. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thanks, Bailey. So I'm doing the math right, your collection rate's more like 65% collection?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Questions for Bailey?
At this point, Jeff, I just looked at my most recent financials before I walked up here, and we're at about 55% right now. And that's kind of speaking to what we're experiencing right now with COVID. That even sounds shocking to me, 55%. It's a lot lower than we normally collect, but we do have some patients that are going to the hospital a couple times and don't have insurance. So we have seen a little bit more bad debt write-off in the last few months, but that's certainly not anything long-term, and we better recover quickly from that, or I'm going to have a lot of questions from my billing office. So
good to hear. Questions for Bailey? I guess Tim or Sherry would start with you, and then the group as a whole.
I had a quick question, Bailey. Just thinking out loud, and I'm sorry that we didn't bring it up in the committee. But with the uninsured, because we do have a good number of them, is there a possibility of having some type of amount that they can, you pull the money in almost like a membership? I know we kind of briefly talked about it, but we didn't target uninsured people.
When we talked about membership before, Sherry, I had I think, quickly dismissed that only because I think membership is attractive to the consumer when you're talking about an expensive air flight. When Guardian was here and they were selling their memberships for helicopter rides, that was something that people were kind of buying into, I think. But I mean, for most people, a $1,200 ambulance ride isn't going to be worth a $50 membership a month, a potential ride. So I'm not the expert on that by any means. I would think Aaron with SafeTech could speak to that a little bit more intelligently than I could. But I mean, as far as a pool for uninsured people, that could be funded in any number of ways. Right now, what we do is just ask the patient to apply for our indigent care program. And then we review, what's happened, if they've lost their job recently, lost insurance, kind of what their hardship is. And then we make a determination. Sometimes what we do see is people not paying their bills, and then they apply for the indigent care program, or we present the application to them, and then all of a sudden they do come up with some money. So we do work with people. I mean, they can make a payment plan, even if they can pay $50 a month. It's not something that we're necessarily just sending people to collections really easily over. But I don't know. I think for the most part, as long as you're willing to work with people, I think it's better to hold them kind of accountable to it too, because you'll have the times when we call them frequent flyers, where people just use the ambulance to get to the ER. And we want to deter people from doing that as much as possible too. So if you just had like a pool that made it easy for people to do that, it might become more of a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I know from being in my industry, you always, if they're willing to pay, you accept it because they're being good faith about it. Okay. Thanks, Bailey.
Yep.
Tim, anything before we open it up to the group as a whole? Tim looks stuck. Oh, there he goes. Now he moved.
I thought everybody else was stuck.
Anything from you for Bailey at all before we go to the group?
No, not for me right now. Oh,
Thank you. Group, any questions for Bailey?
Just got a quick comment, Commissioner, if I could.
Please, Keaton.
I believe the transports you brought up, Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the hospital, Memorial Hospital, has full control of that. I believe that statutory is up to their CEO and their board, where we as government wouldn't have any say. Is that correct?
It is, Councilman, it is correct. The contract currently between Memorial and Sweetwater Medics is, that's completely up to Memorial to decide who they give that business to. I was just saying, I think a few years ago, it kind of got brought up that Castle Rock wasn't part of that transport business. And it was under the prior CEO at the hospital, that Castle Rock wasn't part of that transport business because we weren't ALS, whatever that meant at the time. I was like, yes, we are. So I don't know. It just felt like there was maybe it needed to have, we need to recognize that discussion, because if we're talking about equity between the two communities, it really isn't fair that just one ambulance service gets to take those when there's another ambulance service ready and willing to do the same. And we did, when we first came to the table, we ended up getting 8 or 9 uninsured patients right in a row. And we said, no, we can't do that. We need to be part of a consistent rotation, and we can take our share of the uninsured patients, but it can't be just uninsured. So you're right. It is up to Memorial, and they know that we want to be part of that business. But I was just trying to let you guys know, as far as the subsidy goes, we get the $348,000. subsidy, which is $187 a call. Medics gets more than double that, even though the number of calls that Medics responds to is double what Green River responds to, plus they have the transport business. So just speaking to the city having to subsidize any more than the city of Rock Springs, it doesn't seem like that would be fair for the citizens in Green River.
Understood. I don't think the cities feel like it's fair either way with this short notice here, but can you explain your guys' subsidy? I mean, just based off the notes that I've got from Councilman Robinson, it looks like over the last 5 years or so, you've gone anywhere from 81,000 up to 301,000.
Yeah.
What do you
So-
get that to?
Sure. So there was a period of a couple years where we didn't get any subsidy at all. And I think that was shortly after the commission helped us with the mission transfer with the nursing home. And then it was your dad actually that suggested to me that we just align, I came back and said, we do need help with the ambulance. Like we've taken a couple years, but long-term, we do need help with the ambulance. And he suggested that we just align our per call subsidy with that of Rock Springs, and then you just make it fair. So that's what we started doing. Whatever Rock Springs asked for, we just asked for the same per call subsidy. And so that increase has come, when Rock Springs asked for an increase, we asked for the same, except for this last year, the mid-year increase that Medics asked for, we did not ask for that, and probably just because I was so busy with COVID and I missed it. So.
Whew, glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bailey. That's all I had, Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Any other questions out there from the group as a whole?
Commissioner Smith, this is Steve Corbellis. I got a question / statement.
Feel free.
I'd like to add just a couple things, is that in our collection reporting that we're required to report to the ambulance board, the oversight board for the contract, our collection rate is based on amount billed versus what's collected. And it does kind of show that it's a lower collection rate as opposed to allowable billed to what's collected. So that's because of the reporting requirements from the contract. I wanted to add that out there. And I would like to throw this out there to Bailey, because I agreed with almost everything she said. Along the lines with the sustainability study, we are completely game to form one team and share everything with you guys. So we would like to see that move forward with the sustainable model going there.
Thank you, Steve. Bailey, is that billable against allowable? Is that something that you guys look at as well, or how is your collection rate figured?
So I was going to ask Steve, so you're saying the contract language that you have with the county, you have to, is that what you were saying, that contract?
Yeah, to report to the ambulance oversight board, it said the amount billed to collected.
Oh, okay.
So I can pull up the exact language, but just off the top of my head there.
So our language isn't the same in our contract. I'm not familiar with Medic's contract, but I mean, you always have allowable, and to answer your question, Commissioner Smith, you always have allowable because there are certain contracts that you know this better than anybody, that you're going to take a write-off from, and you know that off the top. For us, though, I mean, so many people are insured by Blue Cross Blue Shield in our community that we know kind of what that looks like long-term. So we don't report it that way. We report it more as this is how much we billed. This is what the contract adjustment was for the month and then for the year. And then this is how much revenue we actually got. It wasn't like what was allowable necessarily. I think we're saying the same thing. It's just your contract with Medics specifically asks them to report what was billed instead of what's allowable at the insurance level.
And which are you doing then?
We bill just at the very top of what we can for every insurance. And sometimes we'll see our contract adjustments higher than in other months. And it does fluctuate a little bit just depending on, if we're behind on certain commercial insurances and haven't adjusted our fee schedules, but it's pretty consistent. So we just report ours as billed to insurance, less contract adjustments, and then our net revenue.
And so what gives you your collection rate? Billed to or adjusted?
Adjusted.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I've got, I guess, I don't know, a question or comment, but we spent the last hour talking about billing rates and that and collection. I don't see where this road leads us to solving the problem we have at hand. We're spending a lot of time talking about billing and that, and we still have no idea where we're going to be a month from now. I don't know that our conversation tonight is really productive unless someone can point me in a different direction where I'm thinking. I'd appreciate that.
Rob, happy to, what would you like to know, I we're open for any questions you like, and as a committee, and happy to try to answer them best we can. And I don't have an answer to helping Rock Springs find $400,000. If that's the question, if that needs to be resolved tonight, I don't have that answer, but
No, I just
can try anything else.
we're talking about billing and collections, and that is getting us to the answer we need. So I think right now it's an hour of time that's kind of wasted, so we're not getting anywhere, in my opinion. But that is what it is.
I can tell you where I'm at with it, Rob. And maybe this is just me. I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole council, but I will not support this. And it's nothing against Medics or Castle Rock. It is against the county. And I just think this has been handled very last minute, and it's pushy politics. It's not building bridges or, amending any relationships. It's let's throw it in your lap and see how you deal with it. And I just will not be supporting it. So I think the county should figure it out, and we should assist them in trying to come up with a long-term solution. I think we're all ultimately on board with that, but in the short term, it's just not going to happen for me. So that's where I'm at with it. If that helps, Rob.
Then that's kind of what I think that's where a lot of us are. And so we need to start working towards that solution and figure out a path forward, and not quabble over billing is kind of my thoughts.
Okay, I can, in defense of the county, I can say we've invited members from both councils who have been at all of the meetings for months, and this has been conveyed to them for some length of time, well before last night. And so if that wasn't communicated to the councils, then, that's difficult for me to understand. It was made clear that's the route we were going to go months ago when we started this. So, if there's, I'll just leave it at that. We'll just say that it should not have been a surprise. How's that? Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, if I could, we obviously have two problems, and I agree it's not about, we all concerned about the billing and the collection, but we have two problems. One that's at the forefront that is now a crisis, and that's the short-term funding to get us through June's end, and where we're going to come up with those dollars. And then the long-term goal, which I've stated before, we need to solve this and some other problems that we know exist all at one time, other than dealing with each individually. And that's most likely in the Fairmont district, whether it's the one that exists or we do something there. The biggest thing that I myself, as I stated before, really am trying to wrap my arms around is just what it takes to run an ambulance service. That's the long term. Where we're going to come up with the money here in the short term is going to be a struggle, I can assure you, for our city council. But I agree. We all need to keep focused on working together to fix the problem. It's going to be a struggle. There's no doubt in the short term to come up with these kinds of funds. And there's no way we can sustain that going into as long as it may take to form a district and move it into that direction. But I think we should have started this quite some time ago, and maybe we would have been there by this time. But it will be a struggle, and I can sense the frustration of our city council as we're making deep cuts. But we better focus and realize this isn't our only problem. And if we're going to address this problem, there's a couple other problems we're all aware of that need to be included. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments out there regarding from council members from either town or the committee?
I will say, is there a dollar amount that the cities feel comfortable with in supporting and helping? If we're going to have a negotiation, then let's negotiate and talk about it. What would feel comfortable in if we match whatever you're able to come up with, well, then we can ask medics if that's going to be sustainable for them.
Hey, this is Reed. I'm just going to follow up a little bit on regarding, from a dollar standpoint, whatever. I mean, we're in the middle of budgets and trying to do this, and I think that I'm kind of more on Mayor Como's side and talking to Mayor Rust and everything is that, we definitely need a long-term solution. And I don't think a long-term is 3 to 5 years. If we can get through, what do we need to do to get through this, immediate crisis or whatever like that. But, with some of the stuff that's gone through legislature and some of the stuff that's happening on what we might be able to do from a tax standpoint, creating a district or creating a tax or whatever that might be in order to do this, I think we're probably jumping the gun in terms of trying to decide what we want to do or trying to even negotiate right now. I mean, you've been working on this for, 4 to 5 years, and we have it in the last 2 weeks, or we have less than 2 weeks to, come up with the money when we're trying to drop, 30%, 20% on our budgets. So, how do we, I'm just saying, I think we need to see kind of what happens with some of this stuff in the legislature and what we might be able to do as cities and what we might be able to do in terms of, revenue generation and, what's going to happen from a school tax to, all those kinds of things. But it has to be looked at as a whole. I don't think we can just fix ambulance. We need to fix all of, these, all the things that have to do with emergency management services. And we should be looking at it as a whole, not as a one part. So that's just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. And for
Thank
the
you, Reed.
people, excuse me, Commissioner Smith, for the people listening, that was Reed Clevenger, who's for Green River. He's their business, or their, come on, Reed, what's your title?
City Administrator.
Administrator. Thank you. That was the city administrator from Green River. Thank you. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Any other questions or comments to be made? Very good. Then we will continue as a committee to work, and I apologize for the time taken and hope that the many other committees are not so lengthy as ours.
Thank you, Ambulance Committee, and thank you for everyone that participated with that. Moving on, our next up will be our Special Purpose Tax Penny Group, and I don't believe Commissioner Shainfield's on, but I do believe Commissioner Lloyd is on. He's the co-lead. Commissioner Lloyd and any of those members, status of where you're at?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick update. I talked to Commissioner Shainfield last week to see if she had moved towards setting a meeting at this point, and she said she hadn't. Was kind of worried that we weren't in a time frame to be ready for an election soon. But I recommended that we will be reaching out to all the members of that Six Penny group in the next week or two to set a meeting so we can at least come up with a timeline and time frame of the direction we're looking. I do think as some of the legislative stuff comes out, that could be impactful to it, but we want to at least set an organizational meeting in the next 2 or 3 weeks to bring that group together. So. And I told Commissioner Shanefield if needed, I will just organize and I'll get those invites out.
Thank you. Is there any committee member from, other committee members from Special Purpose Tax that would like to speak? All right, with none there, let's move on. Joint Communications, I'll go to our mayors. Anything there for Joint Communications? As well as their members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Tim. I have nothing at this time. Joint Communications is, in my opinion, another issue that we would consider safety-oriented district at this time. It's a large bill. It's going to take much discussion, and I don't think we have the time for that tonight. But I think it's on the top of our minds, and we'll be dealing with that as we have this discussion with ambulance.
I sense from you, as well as if any other committee members want to jump in, that possibly a long-term fix is where the target's going to go. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, moving on. Next one up, Joint Telecommunications. I believe Commissioner Shanefield is also part of that group, but is there a lead for Joint Telecommunications, or have they even met yet? And part of that is Councilman Jost from Green River, Larry Erdman from Green River, or David Halter from Rock Springs, Derek Robinson, or Matt Burnett. Anything regarding Joint Telecommunications? I hear nothing, so we'll move forward. Next up is centralized inventory, and I believe the lead was or part of that committee working with it was Mrs. Toman. To report tonight, I believe is going to be Councilwoman Bushman from Green River. Is that correct, Councilwoman Bushman?
That is correct. Thank you.
Floor is yours.
So actually, it's going to be for more or less called joint purchasing, because inventory is completely separate job description and tasks. So I just wanted to point that out. But we did meet, and keeping it sweet and short. So we're going to be looking at the janitorial supplies first as a to look at all the supplies and actually have go to the vendor, have one purchase order, have purchase orders from that, a different ship to, one to Rock Springs, one to Green River, and wherever else from the county. That way we have same pricing for products. We do recognize that we want to make sure that we will have one-offs because that product may be special for a certain department, just keeping that in mind. So that is our first pass. We're meeting on Monday and to go over those supplies to make sure that everything ticks for tie, and that's what Marty's going to be doing. So that's where we're at right now.
All right, thank you. Do any of the other committee members with now is going to be centralized purchasing? Any of those other committee members want to speak? All right, thank you. Moving on to fire and police, and the notes are it's too broad of a topic and not necessary to set up a committee at this time. Mayors, do you agree with that?
Mr. Chairman, that is a whole nother ball of wax. I'm going to say fire also going to be something to consider in the future of districting. But if I could back up just a hair.
Sure.
It seems like the centralized inventory is now morphing into a centralized purchasing type of situation. which I was hoping it wouldn't, but it sounds like the committee found some issues that Jerry mentioned that it might need to. My biggest concern is, and I don't believe, have we lost all the small towns? Do we have anybody from the towns on from your roll call? I don't.
Wamsutter is on. You got Dusty from
Wamsutter's on.
Wamsutter, as well as we have their clerk and one of their board members or council members here in the.
Okay, I
chamber.
would just ask, Mr. Chairman, that the centralized inventory purchasing, whatever that committee is, take a strong look and see if we're going to be able to serve all these small towns, or it just doesn't make sense, because if we have everybody involved, then it's really not going to make sense. We're wasting people's time.
Correct, and we'll have Councilwoman from Green River, we'll have her carry that request forward, if that's okay. Sherry?
Yes, of course. Wamsutter is involved. They're going to be providing their information to us on Monday. So they're a part of this.
So, yes, thank you. And I think
Thanks,
at
Sherry.
some point in time, Mayor, I think Marty Dernovich might be able to come forward as they move ahead and give a good explanation and put some sideboards on it for you and that type of thing. So let's let the committee work if you're okay with that. And then we'll come back and get a good report with Marty involved, who probably will head all this up. Is that all right, Mayor?
Good with me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, so going forward, we talked about fire and police. Next is animal control. And I believe, I'm just going to ask right up front, do we have a lead person for animal control?
Nah, that would be myself, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lloyd,
And
thank you.
Jeannie Demas from Rock Springs will be helping me chair that. We have had our initial meeting. Just to give a quick synopsis, a lot of the committee, and we did have a representative from Wamsutter, from the small communities there. Green River and the county didn't see a lot of benefits toward the consolidation. Rock Springs did. We did talk about some of the concerns to get there. A lot of concerns could take time due to ordinance differences, changing ordinances, coming to agreement to ordinances. Other is some of how things are done differently in the shelters. Where they saw the greatest amount of support could be potentially down the road with consolidation. We could see a reduction of force, possibly, that could help the city of Rock Springs more than probably the other two communities. And then also really in the concept of some centralized purchasing and inventory to help with cost reduction by sharing resources and just continuing to increase out in some partnerships and relationships. So we are going to meet again this month to further look at things, taking some specific looks at costs and if there really would even be cost benefit to consolidate. So we are moving forward.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Any other committee members on animal control have anything they'd like to add? All right, thank you. Moving on. Go, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Demas.
I'll put in there that I did speak with Lieutenant Fisher and he's not interested at all in going forward with it. I feel Green River's not interested. The only people that are interested will be Rock Springs.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll visit with your mayor and Commissioner Lloyd and see if this is something we need to commit.
And Mr. Commissioner Chairman Wendling, that was something else I said in my report that the support was really more on the Rock Springs side. So my thought was we'd have another meeting convene, just have a conversation and see if it is even worth to continue meeting, or even maybe look at like every 6-month partnership meeting where we just kind of share resources and ideas and not go into consolidation. So, but we were going to pick up some of those costs and take a look at it. But I would agree with Councilman Demas that I don't see it moving forward.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lloyd. Councilwoman Demas, you're fine with that?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Solid waste recycling, that committee has met a couple times. Our lead is Councilman Savage. I know he's not on tonight because he's working volunteer work, but we all from the city of Green River have Councilman Jost as well as the city employee Mark Westenskoff. Mark, are you out there?
Yes, Commissioner Wendling, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yes. So,
Thank you.
yes, the committee's met actually a couple of times via Zoom, and the first meeting we basically got to a better understanding of what our mutual systems contain, and we've been looking at moving forward, trying to identify what it is that each community wants out of or would want out of. Are there areas of partnership that would be mutually beneficial? And I see Councilman Joseph's on here as well. He may be able to provide some thoughts as well.
All right. Councilman Jost, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, you know, we just, Mark come up with a couple ideas for getting rid of some solid waste from the wastewater in Rock Springs. And we need to start working with the solid waste district, get with those guys and see what we can do. And, you know, and staff people are starting to talk to each other. So we're just starting to get moving on a couple things. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Appreciate that. With that, we'll move on. But before we do, I noticed there's 2 chat comments up. Thank you, Ms. Lane. Could you read those, please, if there's anything we need to look at for somebody? Okay, very good. Thank you. We're good to go. All right, next up, of course, water sewer, and it's a too broad a topic and not necessary to set up a committee at this time. Mayors, you still feel that way?
Agreed, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you,
Doc.
All right, and then the next one up is review of duplication of services, and that's between Mayor Rust, Mr. Clevenger, Mayor Como, myself. Anything any of those committee members would like to report on regarding duplication of services? I think that's a broad topic and covers a lot of things, Mayor. Okay. Next up, I know on recreation, last time we met, it was too broad of a topic and not necessary to set up a committee at this time, but I would like to take a moment and have Mayor Rust talk with us as a group of moving forward with a steering committee as well as a stakeholders group regarding Sweetwater County Outdoor Recreation Collaborative. So Mayor Rust, would you like to bring the committee up to speed on this new collaborative?
Sure. And just before I do that, since I've been quiet as I quite often am, I just want to say that, you know, Reed and I have talked about all of these issues quite a bit. And you know, we're consistent exactly with what he said is we believe, and of course, we're tracking the legislature very closely. And I think our pathway will be made much clearer very soon based on what they do with a couple of bills. And, you know, amongst them, we've all talked about this, you know, if there's going to be a school tax, that's going to affect, you know, what kinds of things we can do. Some of the other legislation they're doing in terms of with 6th penny, 7th penny, 8th penny, special tax districts and all that. So I think we're going to know pretty soon. And then I think we'll be formulating our positions much more clearly based on, you know, through the budget process. So with that, this Sweetwater County Outdoor Recreation Committee, there was a group, in fact, Doc volunteered me to participate in the group. There was 7 people initially that met that have been identified as the steering committee. And how this all came about is Mark Kopp met with Kyle Bernis. He's the Shoshone District Manager for Wyoming State Parks. We're in the Shoshone District, or the Shoshone District. And Chris Floyd is the manager of the Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation, both Wyoming State Parks employees. And what these guys have been basically cast to do throughout the state is there's funding that's been made available for areas that want to form collaboratives that are doing somewhat similar to what we're doing right here. And that is working together with the various communities, and in this case, the various recreational outdoor interests. So we've got, of course, you guys know, we've got fishing, we've got mountain biking, we've got 4x4 vehicles, so we've got motorized vehicles, on and on and on. Outdoor recreation is certainly something we have extensively in Sweetwater County. And these folks have grant programs, so they have money available. They have training expertise. Their job is to try to help local groups form collaboratives and work towards identifying what outdoor recreational uses and projects and project planning that they want to work together on. And for instance, we've only had 2 meetings. The first meeting, and again, that group, which was Mark Cott, Dylan Bear, Eric Bingham, Janessa Meredith, myself, Doc Wendling, and Kayla McDonald, and Kyle and Chris. So there was only 7 of us. And what they asked us to do was to come up with people that we thought were in the recreational area that would have an interest in pursuing this kind of a project. And so we came up with all kinds of different people. And the second meeting that was held at the college and in Green River and also on Zoom went from 7 people to 50 people. And the U.S. Forest Service out of Vernal, Utah was there. Seed Skiddy's manager was there. All kinds of private outdoor recreational groups, you know, Trout Unlimited, all of those kinds of groups. There's people from the mountain biking business in Rock Springs is to be included. And the whole idea is that to first find out who wants to be committed long-term, and we're talking for a couple years potentially, to develop projects and project planning, which they're going to stick with and be committed to. And the whole idea of collaborative is no different than the idea of what we're doing here is that if we all work together, we can be more effective with our sharing of our resources. Certainly makes sense. And to the extent that we can do that and work together, knowing no differently than this situation, that there's going to be bumps in the road, there's going to be differences of opinion. But if we can come up with various projects, and that's part of the homework that we were given at the last meeting, and a number of you guys, I can, from the names on the screen here, heard that. And for instance, they want us to come back and say, you know, what is it that we love about Sweetwater County? What is it that we love about the outdoor recreation in Sweetwater County? Where do we see opportunities that are not being fully utilized, and that we can, you know, perhaps develop as projects and plan those through, and they will guide us through that, provide the technical expertise, and then direct us towards the funding opportunities that will be available. So it's again, it's almost a microcosm of what we're doing here, except with outdoor recreation. And they'll be setting the next meeting is to be arranged. They're generally 2 to 3 weeks is what the group agreed to. They want to really meet fairly often initially, and then it'll slow down like most kinds of group endeavors do. And we'll see, you know, at the next meeting, who's committed out of the 50. Are we going to grow? Have we got smaller? And then move from there. And I think, you know, what's the most likely thing is going to happen from the homework assignment that we've been given is that we'll come up with a whole bunch of different potential projects, and the group will then start to prioritize which ones they think have value. And I think it holds an opportunity in that particular narrow area for certainly for both cities and for the county and for all the towns. I think it's a great opportunity, and that's pretty much that's my briefing on the project. Anybody else might have that was either on the Zoom meeting or that attended the meeting, may have some additional comments.
Mayor Russ, that was a good overview. And with that, I would say that we'll open the floor up if anybody out there has questions regarding this collaborative and what its focus is. And again, because it's impacting Green River, Rock Springs, all the towns throughout the county, I guess in Sweetwater County, it is something I think we all come forward and make sure it happens, because good not only for the Sweetwater County, but also I believe it will work in possibly bringing people for recreation to Sweetwater County as a destination. There are 2 collaboratives that were started 2 years ago in Wyoming. One was Bighorn County and the other one was Fremont County. And Sweetwater County is one of the 3 new ones this year. I don't remember the other 2, I apologize, but there's 3 of us starting collaboratives this year. So thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Committee or people out there regarding the collaborative? Thank you. All right, moving on, new topics. One new topic that came up the last meeting was a discussion on consolidating museum and library. And I believe Councilman Hickerson, I think you brought that up, and given more thought to that, what's your thoughts?
Well, my main thought would be to basically just put the Rock Springs Museum under county authority, lease the building to them for, I don't know, a minimal fee. That way, kind of get the advertising and maybe cut back on some staffing if we can. I put the top end and try to save some money that way.
Okay. Do you, I'm going to pull libraries out then. Is that okay for you? Because I know that's all Pierre County. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Commissioner
Yeah,
Lloyd.
just a little bit on that. It is all county. We do have, we do own or rent all the buildings. The one exception, like I reported the last meeting, was the Rock Springs Library, which is really interesting because a portion of the building is owned by Rock Springs, but the majority of the building is owned by the county, so.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I know the answer to this, Councilman Hickerson, but the Rock Springs Museum right now is owned and funded by the city of Rock Springs?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any comments, mayors, regarding Tim? More so?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. I don't want to take that off the list because, when we talk about consolidating services and doing things to not repeat things, it may be something that we should look at. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, Councilman Hickerson. With that, I have next thing on the agenda is other, and I will just say open the floor up for anything other that anybody out there would like to bring to the forefront, whether it's small town, cities, or county. I'll pause so people can think. Very good. For our next meeting then, we basically follow the same format. I was going through and reviewing the committees and that type of thing. If there's any changes, I do encourage the committees to start getting together and get going. I know one of them that's very near and dear to all of us, including small towns, is the 6 penny. And I would, my hopes would be working with our county leads on that, is that because of what's on the horizon regarding what we may be facing for to get any special 6 penny or any other tax passed, we need to get an early start. We can't, we need to almost be ready to go public in January of 2022 with our intent and set the parameters. So that means being pretty much in what I'm thinking is 6 months ahead of where we were last year. Keaton, are you still on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know. What does that sound to you like for the 6 penny?
Well, I believe last time it took about 8 months to get to the point where I think all we had left was finalizing some bonding issues. So yeah, it takes a long time. Obviously, things have changed.
Okay.
But as you had already mentioned, I think the biggest kind of unknown is going to be what other taxes are out there. You know, we're
Exactly.
on the airport, possible municipal, schools. I think they got some legislation today. So it's going to be the big question of, you know, is there going to be 4 or 5 tax initiatives come next general election, and will the public support that? I mean, I don't want to waste any time on a 6-cent initiative if it's going to kill other areas too. But
All righty.
more time, the
All right.
better. It takes a long time.
Appreciate that, but that's just my thoughts. So 6 pennies really pressurized along with everything else. So with that, last thing is any special items for the next meeting to be discussed. I'll open that up to mayors as well as any other council people. Any special item? Not seeing any, don't see a hand raised. All right, we'll move on. Our next scheduled meeting, let me ask mayors and everyone, is the first Wednesday of the month work?
Excuse me, Doc, what did you say? I didn't catch it.
Next meeting, right now, we're meeting on the first Wednesday of every month. Is that still agreeable, mayors?
It works for me.
Tim? All right, we'll continue to go at the first Wednesday of every month. We'll go at 5:30, and we'll host it out of the chambers. I'd like to say thank you to everybody that participated tonight. It was good conversation. I think it was good information, and we'll continue to work towards what I hope is what's best for all the people of Sweetwater County. Thank you. With that, meeting adjourned.
Oh.